It is I, Gamer the Pug. I'm here today to do the introduction. Ooh, look, I'm much clearer now. I'm here to do the introduction today for Daddy's episode of Super Deck Sunday. Sunday. Yes, I did the Sunday head twisting good. And I have my usual Sunday breakfast of a bagel and some bacon, courtesy of my daddy, and courtesy of the Tim Hortons. Daddy says the lady at the Tim Hortons wasn't very nice today. She gave me the exact amount of bacon again, but she also was very, very snappy because Daddy asked for the soup bowl. See the soup bowl? It makes it easier so that Daddy can walk around at the park with it instead of it being in like a paper bag, which is what they would put it in, like the bagel, which is really, really silly for, bacon because A, the bacon doesn't fit into the paper bag very well, so part of it sticks out, and B, it's super greasy, so it gets all over the place regardless of whatever you put it in. So it's kind of a silly thing that they put it in the paper bag. So Daddy always asks for a soup bowl, and usually they're okay with it, but today the lady was very, very rude. Daddy not happy about that. But it is what it is. I have my bacon and my bagel, and we're waiting for the clock. See the clock? See the clock? Why is the clock not showing up? Hey, clock. Stupid clock. Well, it's right now, it's 6:19. You guys can't see it. Actually, you can see it a little bit better from there than you could from the other angle. Anyways, it's 6:19, and we need to wait till 7. Daddy wanted me to walk, but I didn't feel like walking because I'm saving my walking energy for at the park. Because look, it's snowing. I'm so excited. So when we get to the park, we're probably going to have a snow walk, and I'm going to be very happy about that. But in the meantime, in between time, this is the card video. So you guys enjoy your cards, and I'm going to eat if I feel like it, or I'm just going to sit here and chill out while Daddy does his video. Okie day. Love you, humans. Enjoy your cards. Thank you, Kaiba. That's interesting. The lighting changes so much when you zoom out versus when you zoom in. But we're going to go with the zoomed in version today, I think, because I'd rather have the lighting, but that's going to kind of be a little bit awkward, I think, for you guys, because the cards are going to be super big. As Kaiba said, we're here for Super Deck Sunday. This is not the normal deck box for this deck. My element, I always want to call it my elemental deck, but I mean to say my enchantment deck that I showed you guys a couple weeks ago. And this deck happened to take up the 2 spaces in my XL, academic. I almost forgot the name of it. I managed to pick up an academic like a year and a half or 2 years ago almost now. Actually, it might even be longer than that. It was a long time ago. I picked it up in Nova Scotia when I was working there and making some decent coin. And it's a pretty awesome deck box. I've reviewed it before on my channel. If I remember to, I'll go back and find the review and put a link to it in the description of this video, but chances are I'll forget that later on. But yeah, so this is my other deck that I put into that deck box. The reason I put those 2 decks into that deck box is because that deck box has a lot of counters, which I need the counters, dice, etc., etc. But also because these are 2 of my favorite decks, the enchantment deck and this one. And this one is not... It's simultaneously super powerful, but also a very much glass cannon of a deck. So with that regard said, please don't judge me right off the bat based on the commander. Because a lot of people look at the commander and think, oh, you've built this nasty ass blah 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 deck. And it's all CDH and blah, 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 blah. And I'm not going to say that this deck doesn't have some power. This deck definitely has some power into it. It probably counts as a bracket 3, if not a bracket 4, depending on how many game changers there are in it now. I didn't actually put it into the... I didn't put it into the Architect online yet. I think I have a version of it on there, but I haven't put the updated version on there. Which has a bunch of new cards in it, and so it's definitely probably bracket 3. It might even count as a bracket 4 because of the amount of game changers in it. but it's very much just a glass cannon of a deck that I just enjoy playing for the shits and giggles of it. If it does what it's supposed to do, it's very hard to beat, but chances are pretty slim that it'll actually do what it's supposed to do. More often than not, I kind of grind for the first like 6 or 7 turns, hoping that I'll eventually pull it off. And then when I start to pull it off, people just kill me off right away. So, but with that said, let's get into it. So, the commander for this deck is near and dear to my heart, and it is, oh, yeah, that's not going to sit there super well. Okay, I'm going to have to keep it in the deck box and just show you piece by piece. Eat your breakfast, Kaiba. We're going to go to the park soon, I promise. I promise we're going to the park soon. I know, you're very nervous today. I don't know why, but he's really scared. We got to the Tim Hortons and we went to do our usual like walk outside, and we got like 5 feet, 10 feet. No, it's a little more than that. Maybe like meters. Probably like 10 meters from the car. And then he got really upset and decided he wanted to come back. I think it's because he wanted to go a different route today, but I'm just not super familiar with the other direction, and trying to navigate it in the dark was not my idea of fun. Anywho, Commander. Commander of this deck is Esika, God of the Tree. This deck is what I like to call Commander Party. So the goal of this deck is to, every card in this deck, creature-wise, is a legendary creature. So basically, Esika is throwing a giant party at the tree, and everybody's invited. That's how I play this deck. Unlike a lot of people who automatically will play the bridge, which I will show you the other side, of course, the bridge is the main way that people will play this commander. And I will admit that my goal is to get the bridge out, don't get me wrong, because that's what makes the deck do what it's supposed to do. But if I can't get the bridge out, I've played Esika before on the other side, and it's a lot of fun too with this deck. So, the Prismatic Bridge. For Wooburg, you get, at the beginning of your upkeep, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature or a planeswalker card. Put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So basically this is like Discover, almost, except that you're not actually casting the card, you're just putting it into play. On the other side, Esika, as I was showing, is a Vigilant 1/4 that taps for 1 mana of any color, and all other legendary creatures you control also have Vigilance and tap for 1 mana of any color. So either way, whichever way I want to play her, she actually benefits the deck significantly by being out, because all my creatures are legendaries. With that said, as I did mention, the goal is to get the Planner Bridge out instead. I always forget exactly what the name is. The Prismatic Bridge. To get the Prismatic Bridge out, and then do the thing with the Prismatic Bridge where I'm going to flip things off the top. And there are a bunch of cards in here that actually do similar stuff. I have a card that does Discovering, I have a card that does Cascading, I have another creature that when you play a legendary creature, it basically does a cascade for another legendary creature, and so on and so forth. So like I say, this deck is pretty OP, but it's also very much a glass cannon because it has very minimal interaction. I'm just going to show off the tokens super quick. There's elementals with haste and trample. I couldn't find the exact construct I need, but this is the closest one I could find. But the construct token that I actually need is supposed to get +1/+1 for each artifact and or creature. So, but I don't have a copy of that currently, or if I do, it's in another deck. Same with the Ogre token. It's actually supposed to be a 3/3, not a 4/4, but it is what it is. I use what I had available. Another elemental. The cat I actually don't need, but the elemental is pretty important. There's a couple Kavus in here, so you know what kind of planeswalker is coming. A couple treasures and a couple copy tokens. Yes, this deck actually has some copying nonsense in it too. So like I say, I'm not going to say that this deck doesn't have power. This deck definitely has some power to it. But because of the minimal interaction in terms of like ability for me to counterspell and stuff, yeah, the deck is very much a glass cannon, as I say. Before we get into all the other cards, I wanted to show off this pairing first because I'm actually torn. I finished editing this deck about a week and a half ago and put it aside, and then I was going through my enchantments box for red and green deck that I was editing, and I came across this enchantment, which would pop off really well in this deck, but I haven't decided whether I wanted to use it or I want to keep in Masterwork of Ingenuity. Unfortunately for me, Masterwork of Ingenuity isn't going to copy a lot of stuff in this deck that I'm playing. Like, it has, I think there's like 8 or 9 targets, which is a decent amount, but there are a bunch of legendary artifacts in here too that it can't copy, obviously, because if it did, it would automatically kill the first one. Blacksmith's Talent, on the other hand, is a pretty neat enchantment because I'm going to get an artifact automatically onto the board, which is pretty helpful. You'll see later on. The big thing I like about it is level 2, that I can move an equipment around for free, essentially, at the beginning of combat. And then level 3 is just a bonus thing there where all my creatures have double strike and haste if they're equipped. There's a lot of other things that give double strike in this deck as well, so I'm not super important on that. But I want you guys to take a look at these 2 cards and give me some feedback in the comments as to which one you would run. Whether you would run the Blacksmith's Talent or whether you would run the Masterwork of Ingenuity. Right now I'm sticking with this, but I could be very easily tempted to switch, because there are other decks that this might be very much more beneficial in. That said, the same could be true of this. So either way, something to think about while we go through this. Show you guys the lands next, and then we will get into everything else. I will say that this one is going to be broken up into 4 parts, because the sorceries, instants, and enchantments basically all are going to be crammed into one section of this video, because there's just not really a point to doing anything else with them. So we got our island. This deck actually has a significant amount of lands. You'll be happy to hear, Snoop. I'm running 37, I think, lands in this one. For a Wooburg deck, I suppose I could be running more, but I'm pretty happy with the 37 I'm running, especially given that Essica, if I can get her out, just gives me mana dorks on everything. So, you'll notice there's a lot more forest because the goal is to get Essica out early if I can't get the Prismatic Bridge online. That said, white and red are predominant in this deck as well. Blue and black kind of take more of a back seat. So you'll notice I only had like 1, maybe 2 swamps in here, whereas there are a lot of forests. 4 islands, 3 swamps, bunch of mountains and plains, but the forests are definitely the most dominant thing. Then I'm running 5 different double lands that bounce stuff. So we've got the Garrison, or Boros, we got the Golgari, the Azorius, the Dimir, and the Simic. Just basically giving myself access to extra blue and black, as well as the red, white there, and a little bit of white there. I would ideally like to have had a red, green one in here, but I just didn't have an extra copy of one right now. The Shire, Minas Tirith, and Rivendell are all amazing legendary lands. This one gives me a food. This one lets me draw a card. That one lets me scry 2. All come in untapped if I have a legendary creature on board. And all tap for the mana of their color as well. And then we have Command Tower, Exotic Orchard, because basically I'm going for all colors, so it doesn't matter for me. Hidden Grotto is a pretty decent one. Lets me surveil when it comes into play. Taps for colorless, but I can pay 1 to filter any land that I need, essentially. Guildmage's Forum, colorless, but again, I can pay and get any mana of any color. And then if I spend it on a multicolored creature spell, which there are, I think, 19 in this deck, then that creature comes in with a +1/+1 counter on it, which is pretty solid. This one, Great Hall, taps for colorless, but again, filters for 2 mana in any combination of colors if I pay 1. So this one gives me a bonus. Again, I can only cast legendary spells, but there are a lot of legendary spells in this deck, including enchantments and artifacts. I think there might be somewhere in the neighborhood of like 30 legendary cards in this deck. maybe even more. Actually, probably a lot more. And then Plaza of Heroes. Taps are colorless, adds 1 mana of any color, spend it on legendary spell. Taps for color of any permanent that's a legendary, and then I can pay 3 and exile this, and target legendary gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn, so I can protect something that is key on my board. It does have to be a creature, unfortunately, so I can't save the planeswalker that you're going to see in a minute, but all in all, still pretty solid land base, I think. Next up, we're going to do the... Oh, I know, you're being so patient. Huh. Ah, there we go. I was going to say I screwed up something and maybe left part of the deck at home. That would make this video really awkward, but no. Okay, so I'm going to show you the only two, there's 1 sorcery and 1 instant in this deck. And those are the only spells that are not permanents in this deck. So, the sorcery is Remember the Fallen. I think this one is a very key spell for this deck because it lets me get back a creature and an artifact at a key moment. If I really need to get something back that I lost to keep stuff in play or whatever, this is an amazing insurance policy spell. And the other insurance policy spell that I really that I love in this deck is Heroic Intervention. This deck, basically the core of this deck started out as the Planeswalker that you're going to see in the near future. And so I decided that I would keep this card because that card came with that deck. And all my creatures get hexproof indestructible, or all my permanents, I should say. So protects all my stuff on the board, essentially, which is fantastic. Fertile Ground to give me some extra mana stuff going on there. Same with Abundant Growth. Give me some extra mana stuff going on there. I included an Imprison in the Moon because it's one of my favorite enchantments to mess with somebody, and the fact that you can target a planeswalker or a creature with it is so good. You could also hit a land if you really want to, like if somebody's running like a Cabal Coffers or something like that, you can take that out with this as well, but typically I mostly just focus on the creature planeswalker aspect. I have Ephera's Enlightenment in here because there wasn't a lot of artifacts that I liked that gave flying, but this is a really cool enchantment because it gives the it lets you put a +1/+1 counter on the creature you enchant. The enchanted creature has flying. And then whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you can put this thing back into your hand and then enchant another creature with it. So essentially I can move flying around as much as I want, provided that there are creatures coming into play, which there's definitely a lot of that happening in this deck, as you'll see later on. Widespread Thieving is one of the cards that I'm tempted to pull out for an extra land, but right now it's staying in there because I do have 20 plus multicolored spells, so there is a decent amount in here for sure. Each multicolored spell I cast will give me a treasure token, and then I can pay Wooburg to get the card that gets hidden away underneath this when it gets cast. Maelstrom Nexus gives the first spell I cast each turn Cascade, so like I say, this deck is basically just about pulling stuff off the top repeatedly and putting into play for free a lot of the time. Which again is why it's very much a glass cannon, because if I can't get it to work, it's just going to sit there and let me get killed. And then finally, I have a Leyline of the Guild pack in here to help ease the issue. If I'm lucky enough to pull this in my opening hand, basically all my mana problems are solved right away. If not, whenever I can get it out, it's still very helpful. Each non-land permanent I control has all colors. And lands I control are every basic land type in addition to their types. So you're going to see later on that this interacts really well with my Planeswalker. And it's going to, again, just make everything on the board multicolored. That doesn't really work super well with regards to the Widespread Thieving, because it doesn't apply as it comes into play. It's once it's a permanent. So, but it's still pretty good all around, I think. Hopefully you guys agree. And now we're going to get into the bulk of the deck, which is pretty much all enchantments, and artifacts. Basically, when I built this deck originally, it was at a time where I like to swing wide. Or I was trying to win always with combat damage. So I built the ultimate, like, legendaries and weapons deck. And here's the Planeswalker I've been talking about, Jared Cathalion. Hopefully you guessed by now. If not, sorry for spoiling it. He makes Kavus, which are pretty cool. They come in, they're 3/3 creature tokens with trample and have all colors. He can give 2 target creatures +1/+1 counter for each color. So if my Leyline is on the field, any creature I target is going to get +5/+5 with that ability. And for -6, I can return a target multicolored card from my graveyard to my hand. And if it was all colors, I get to draw a card and create 2 treasure tokens. I'm not going to lie, that last one I'm probably not pulling off anytime. I just don't care about that last one. But going back and forth between the first two is what Jared does really well in this deck. Hajar, Loyal Bodyguard, is essentially in here to act as another heroic intervention to protect all my creatures. Again, since every creature in here is a legendary, all my creatures will be protected when he gets killed. Nael, I have a hard time reading her, sorry. Avizoa Aeronaut, there we go. Flying 2/4. She's pretty solid. Whenever she deals combat damage to a player, I can look at the top X cards in my library, where X is the number of basic land types among lands I control. Ideally, I want to have all 5 on board. And then I can put one of those cards on top of my library, the rest on the bottom in a random order. If I have all 5, I get to then draw a card, so basically I'm adding something to my hand. I've got Muwu. This one's just in here mostly because it's one that's near and dear to my heart. It was in here from the beginning for this deck, and while I will admit it's not one of the better cards in this deck, it is in here still because it's a good dog, and we like to pet that dog, as they say over on Smithstack. I have Loot Exuberant Explorer. I can play an additional land in each of my turns, and he also lets me get stuff off the top. Look at the top 6, reveal a creature with mana value less than or equal to the number of lands, put it onto the battlefield, rest on bottom random order. Mostly is in here for the extra landfall, but I will say that the ability is definitely key on flavor with this deck, I mean. Savala, another one, beautiful for getting stuff off the top, gives me extra mana, gives me life, insanely good value in this deck. Combustion Man is one of the new add-ins. I pulled like 3 of those in my box, and honestly, he's just too good not to include in this deck. Whenever he attacks, I destroy a permanent unless its controller has Combustion Man deal damage equal to his power. I always get this confused because of the way it's worded. It's really complicated to read it properly, but basically what that means is you have a choice. When I attack you, I either get to pick something on your board and destroy it, or you're going to get double damage from this thing, essentially. Presuming you can't block it. Storvald Frost Giant Jarl is insane. Ward 3 gives all my other creatures Ward 3. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, I can choose one or both. I can make a creature become base 7/7, or I can make a creature base 1/1 until end of turn. So essentially, I can really mess with somebody else's board and at the same time boost something powerfully on my board, in addition to all the +1/+1 counters and whatever else it has going on. You're not eating your food, eh? You're really upset today. I don't know why. Braid's Arisen Nightmare. She is just diabolical in this deck. Basically, I'm going to do a whole bunch of sacrificing on my creatures and my artifacts mostly. And then I'm going to make you try to do the same. And if you don't, I get to draw cards and gain life. Or you guys lose life and I draw cards. Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. I don't have to sacrifice though, which is my favorite part about this card. It's a may option. So if I'm not in a position where I feel like sacrificing is in my benefit, I won't do it. But if I have a bunch of treasures on board, I can easily sacrifice one of those and then, yeah. Galea, Kindler of Hope. She's a 4/4 with Vigilance. I can look at the top of my library anytime. I can reveal aura and equipment spells from the top. As you saw, I don't really have a lot of auras, but there's definitely going to be a bunch of equipment in this deck. And I can cast an equipment spell When I cast an equipment spell this way, from the top, that equipment gets the ability where it enters the battlefield, I can attach it to a creature I control automatically without having to pay the equip cost, which is pretty cool. So she's a solid one for this deck. Kati Bree of Mithril Hall is a fun one for this deck. First strike and reach, so she helps me block the flying. She gets a +1/+1 counter on her for each equipment attached to her when she attacks. And then I can pay 1 to remove all the counters from her to deal X damage to target attacking or blocking creature an opponent controls. So in an emergency, I can wipe out something that's trying to deal damage to me before it actually hits, probably. Yoshimaru, Ever Faithful. Another good dog. We pet that dog too. And whenever a legendary permanent enters the battlefield under your control, you put a +1/+1 counter on him. So he's going to get really big in this deck. Like Moo-Woo, which Moo-Woo's going to get really big if you can get +1/+1 counters going on it. But Yoshimaru just automatically is getting those counters, so solid stuff there. Give her trample and she's going to, or he's going to annihilate you. Falco Sparta, Pact Weaver. This one is one that I could probably remove if I really wanted to, but I like this guy. Flying trample 3/3, he comes in with a shield counter, so he's protected from like one spell that could destroy him or battle damage for 1 turn. And then I can look at the top card of my library anytime, and I can cast spells from the top of my library by removing a counter from a creature I control, in addition to paying their other costs. So with the +1/+1 counter thing going on with Bree, for example, I could remove 1 counter from her or from Yoshimaru to cast things from the top of my deck that aren't necessarily auras or equipments. Rook Hex Gold Nabber is hilarious in this deck. Trample Haste. Whenever an equipped creature I control other than him attacks or dies, I can attach all the equipment that was attached to that creature to him. So, if I swing with a bunch of stuff and you decide not to block Rook, I can take all the stuff that was on those other things, move it to Rook, and then Rook becomes overstacked and just destroys you. Or, you block Rook, but then all my other stuff is going to be hitting you just as hard. So, either way, and then if any of my other stuff dies, I still get to attach that stuff to Rook. Assuming he survives. Valduk, Keeper of the Flame, is a fun one for this deck too. Again, I don't have a lot of auras, but I do have a bunch of equipment. Whenever he attacks, or sorry, at the beginning of combat, for every equipment that's attached to him, I'm going to make one of those 3/1 elementals that I showed you before. They have trample and haste and they get exiled at the beginning of the next end step, but they still swing for 3/1, which is a lot of extra stuff that you have to block. This is another new add-in for me. I didn't even realize I had this until recently. But when I looked at it and I realized what it did, I had to add it into this deck. Whenever this guy or another non-token historic permanent enters the battlefield under my control, he deals 1 damage to each opponent and I gain a life. He is going to pop off huge. Archelios is in this deck as well. I have a lot of lands that you see could come in potentially tapped. So by having him on board untapped, all those lands come in automatically untapped as well, which is really nice. But the best part about him is I can tap him for land if I have Essica on board, and then all your stuff comes into play tapped during your turn, which is hilarious. Eowyn, Lady of Rohan, gives a creature either first strike or vigilance at the beginning of combat, but if the creature is equipped, it's going to get both. And she reduces all my equip costs by 1, which is fantastic. This is a new one that I added in recently. Again, just crazy good card for this deck. All my creatures are going to have vigilance and surveil 1. So again, I can make my turtle tap to surveil if I can't keep Essica on board. And then the best part about her is if she's in my graveyard, I can exile her for an insane amount of mana, but then I can return any number of artifact cards with total mana value 10 or less from my graveyard to the battlefield. As you're going to see, she's a fantastic savior for this deck too when people start targeting some of the artifacts that you're going to see in the near future, which are just very powerful artifacts as well. Peregrine Dynamo, he lets me copy any of the triggers of any of my legendaries that are already on board that is not my commander. So if I'm playing the Prismatic Bridge, it doesn't matter because I'm not going to be copying my commander's trigger anyways. But by paying 1, I can copy any of the other abilities of my legendaries. That's pretty crazy. I could copy Arabesses, I could copy Rooks, I could copy the damage that Katibri does. Cole, the Forge Master. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, if it was enchanted or equipped, it comes back to my hand. So this lets me get back a bunch of my creatures, which is really nice. And all my creature tokens, so those little elementals that I showed you before, for example, if I decide to equip them, they would get +1/+1. But equipping them during combat's kind of difficult, so probably not going to happen, but I'm just saying the possibility is there. I could equip my Kavus, for example, too. Lorraine, Disciple of History, or another legendary enters the battlefield under my control. I get an artifact back from my graveyard. Again, just trying to get my artifacts back because I am expecting them to get destroyed. Same with my creatures. And since this deck is mostly creatures and artifacts, that's why we want them. Rain, Angel of Rebirth, another one, giving all my multicolored creatures +1/+0. And she has flying, but the best part is whenever a multicolored creature dies, it comes back to my hand at the beginning of the next end step. Maren, Clan of Nel Toth, another one for getting stuff back. If a creature dies that I control, I get an experience counter. At the beginning of end step every turn, or at the beginning of my end step each turn, sorry, I get to choose a target creature in my graveyard. If it has mana value less than the number of experience counters I have, I get to put it right back on the battlefield. Otherwise, it goes into my hand. Kazul, Tyrant of the Cliffs, is the one that's making the ogres that I talked about earlier, and this one is hilarious. This is like my protection from being attacked card. So whenever a creature an opponent controls attacks, if I'm the defending player, I get to make an ogre, unless they pay 3. Presuming they can't pay the 3, I'm making a bunch of ogres, and I'm using those ogres to block everything they attack me with. If they pay the 3, I can pick and choose what I'm going to block, but I mean, still, that's an insane amount of mana. And those tokens don't seem to go away. So if I don't lose them in the combat step, for example, yeah, I have extra tokens on board. Galadriel, Light of Valinor. She is hilarious in this deck, because whenever a creature enters the battlefield, it doesn't have to be cast. So my Prismatic Bridge, all the cascading, all the discovering you're going to see in a bit, like, all that stuff's going to do wonders for this deck. When that creature enters, I get one of the 3. I either get 3 green mana, I get a +1/+1 counter on everything, or I get to scry 2 and draw a card. Dejero and Hazarat, 5/4, as long as I can have 1 or fewer cards in my hand, it has Vigilance and Haste. I'm going to be running pretty much no cards in hand because I have no interaction, so if I can get everything on board, that's the goal. And then whenever it attacks, it does the same thing basically that Loot did. I can exile a legendary creature from among the 6 that it looks at, put the rest on the bottom of my library in a random order, and until the end of the turn, I can cast that card without paying its mana cost. Kutzil Malamut Exemplar is in here because it prevents you from doing anything during my turn. That's the main reason it's in here, I'm not going to lie. There's no real rhyme or reason to the second part. I mean, if I do the combat damage and I get to draw cards, that's great, but I'm really not interested in that. I'm shutting you down. Sean, Father of Synths, is in here because he's freaking hilarious as well. All my legendary creatures are going to be potentially copied whenever this thing attacks. Or, sorry, I don't even have to attack with this thing. That's even better. Whenever I attack, I can create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of target attacking legendary creature. Yeah. Except for him. So, I mean, but I don't even have to attack with him to do this. The downside is when he leaves the battlefield, I have to exile all the copies. But I'm still getting insanely good value out of that. Jetmir, Nexus of Revels is in here because my board is going to get loaded up really fast. And once it is, I'm going to have all these extra benefits. +1/+0 in Vigilance, +1/+0 in Trample, +1/+0 in Double Strike. 9 creatures, and I am swinging for the fences. Joda Unifier, legendary creatures get +X/+X, where X is the number of legendary creatures I control. That's a lot of legendaries. And whenever I cast a legendary spell from my hand, exile cards from the top of my library until I reveal a legendary non-land card with lesser mana value. I can cast it without paying the mana cost. So, again, just doing the trigger off the top. The last one I'm going to show you for now, and then I'm going to be putting a pause in this video because it's actually 6:50 and I got to get Kaiba to the park. So we'll finish the artifacts after. But it's actually a double as a creature and an artifact, which is why I was putting it as the bridge here. So I'll show you the creature side now, and I'll show you the artifact side when I come back. The creature side is Raydan, God of the Worthy. 2 and a white for 2/3 flying vigilance. I don't care about the snowland thing because I don't have any, and I'm not expecting you to. But the non-creature spell thing is pretty cool. Non-creature spells your opponent's cast with converted mana cost 4 or greater cost 2 more to cast. So anything that is not a creature that you want to pay 4 or more for, you're paying an extra 2 for. Which is pretty insane. And like I say, we will show you guys the artifact side of that card and all the other artifacts when we come back. But for now, I'm going to put a break in this video. Hooans! We're back for more Super Deck Sunday, and I get more bacon. Yay, bacon! Da 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 da. Okay, put the rest down there for you, okay? You still have one piece for when we get home. If you'll let Daddy go do his laundry right away, you can have it right then. Otherwise, you can have it after. But I have a feeling you're going to make me go outside first. Oh, you want it now? Alright, you can have it now. You can munch on it while I do the deck. Okay? Hold on. Let me get the rest of it broken up. Oh, I know. I see those greedy eyes. Here you go. Okay, you munch on that. Try to find a napkin. Pocket. Turn down the heater so that the humans can hear us. And we are back in the car to do the artifacts for the Super Deck Sunday deck. Ooh, the lighting is fudged because of the... Huh. I wonder if I can change that by making the view smaller. No, that didn't make it better. I might just have to try and... Oh, okay, we'll have to tilt it like that. There we go. I figured out the solution. Alright, so we were looking at Raydan, God of the Worthy, which is a pretty cool creature. But to be honest, the better side is definitely Valkmira, Protector Shield. If a source an opponent controls would deal damage to a permanent or myself, I get to prevent one of that damage. And whenever myself or another permanent I control becomes the target of a spell or an ability an opponent controls, I can counter it unless they pay 1. So when I was saying I don't really have a lot of like counter spell stuff and things like that, it's really because I have a lot of ways to just lock out and control the board in general. And this would be one of them. You saw the Malamute earlier. That also helps with that issue. If you can't play stuff on my turn, then that's fantastic for me. But also, if I can counter your stuff, that's even better. I've got a Chromatic Lantern. If I can't get the enchantment onto the board, the ley line, then at least I have another way to make all my mana fix for whatever I need it to. Just costs 3. Skyclave Relic is amazing if you can actually pay the kicker. So if you have 6 available, what ends up happening is you get an indestructible relic that taps for 1 mana of any color, but because you kicked it, you get to make 2 tokens that are copies of it. So you end up having 3 copies of it on board that tap for 3 mana of any color, which just instantly elevates how much stuff you can do and what you're able to play. Mirror of Galadriel. Again, if I'm running an entire deck full of legendaries, this is going to be super great in this deck because it'll tap for free and scry 1, then draw a card, assuming I have a full board. 5 to reduce it to nothing. Sora the Animist, fantastic card, gives +1/+1, and whenever my equipped creature attacks, I can search my library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. Basically, this is another way to get all my lands out as quickly as possible, because like I say, the most challenging part about this deck is definitely trying to get it started. Costs 5 mana, and it has to be Wooburg to get the bridge onto the field in order to get things really flipping off the top the way it wants to. And a lot of the other spells, like the enchantment that gives Cascade, for example, you saw earlier, also require 5, so... There is that issue, which is why Sword of the Animist is an amazing include. Hero's Blade, perfect for a legendary creatures deck because whenever a legendary creature enters the battlefield, I can move this immediately to it if I want to. And equip creature gets +3/+2. It does cost quite a bit to equip, but like I say, if I'm just equipping it automatically, then that's not an issue. Swiftfoot Boots. I went back and forth about this, whether I wanted to include Lightning Greaves or Swiftfoot. And ultimately I decided to go with Swiftfoot just so that if I want to attach other things to the creature that I've attached the Lightning Greaves to, I can still do it. Because once you equip Lightning Greaves, I think you won't be able to equip anything else because equipping is targeting. I could be wrong about that, so let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, but that is basically the main reason why I went with Swiftfoot rather than Lightning Greaves. I had a copy of each and I felt that Swiftfoot was a better choice. Gimli's Axe is fun for this deck. +3/+0, not really why I put it in. I put it in because the legendary creature that I equip this to automatically gets Menace. So for 2 and a red and then equip 2, I'm going to have a creature that can swing and be only blocked by more than one creature. Gets +3/+0 as well. That's pretty solid. Leyline Axe is a fun one. It works just the same way as the Leyline enchantment that I showed you earlier, in that if it's in my opening hand, I can automatically put it onto the battlefield. Whatever I equip it to gets +1/+1. It has double strike and trample, so it becomes a beast on the board. Winged Boots. This is one of the only other ways to get flying in this deck. I thought about including other stuff in here too for flying, but ultimately I decided not to. This one is fantastic though because it's only 1 in a blue to put it into play and then 1 for the equip cost. And your creature gets flying and ward 4, which makes it insanely difficult to target. Especially if the one creature that I showed you earlier, the Stormveld, is on the field. That'll end up being ward 7 for whatever this is equipped to. Fantastic. Diamond Pickaxe, you can't destroy it, which is the main reason why I put this one in over, I think I have a gold main pickaxe or something like that too, which is colorless, but this one is better in my opinion because of that. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has, whenever it attacks, it creates a treasure token. Conqueror's Flail, equipped creature gets +1/+1 for every color among permanents I control, so as long as I have Wooburg on the field, I'm pretty sure it gets +5/+5. And if it's attached to a creature, my opponents can't cast spells during my turn, so another way like the Malamet to lock you out from playing on my turn, which means that you can't counter all my stuff, essentially. Basilisk Collar is the classic include for a deck like this for sure. Death Touch and Lifelink. Cannot get past that. Same with Behemoth Sledge, just way too good. Trample and Lifelink +2/+2. Fantastic. Now we're getting into some of the real heat though. Shamil the Inner Sun, none of my stuff can be countered, so again, I have another thing that's going to prevent you from countering my stuff, which is amazing. And in addition to that, at the beginning of my end step, I get to discover 5. So I'm, again, flipping stuff off the top of my deck, putting it into play for free. It's just, this is what this deck does. It's just a lot of fun in this way, but it's also really stupid. And like I say, very much a glass cannon in that if I don't have the right pieces out to prevent you from playing on my turn or from playing a counter spell, then I'm pretty much screwed. Flowering of the White Tree, all my legendary creatures get +2/+1 and have ward 1. The other part doesn't really matter, obviously, except for that it will apply to all my tokens that come into play. So all my tokens, like my 3/1 elemental creatures with haste, for example, they'll end up being 4/2s. Really good card for this deck. Avacyn's Memorial. It has indestructible. All my permanents that are legendary have indestructible, so my White Tree will be indestructible, my Shamil will be indestructible, a bunch of all my creatures will be indestructible. Animus, Mirror Galadriel, like, it's just such a good include and such a necessary include for this deck, but I don't know what else to say about it. It's just such a good card. And again, if I can get this off the top without having to pay for it by cascading or discovering, I mean, I can't discover this obviously because it's more than 5, but I'm just saying there are ways that I could get it into play that are pretty good. This is where we get the construct things that I was talking about earlier. It's actually gnomes apparently that I need to find. Okay, that's the issue. I was looking for constructs rather than gnomes, so I will look for gnome soldiers when I get home today. But this artifact, when it comes into play, I get to create a white gnome soldier artifact creature token with Its power and toughness are each equal to the number of artifacts and or creatures I control. Basically, my entire board is just going to buff the snot out of this thing, whatever it is. And then at the beginning of my main phase, if I have 5 untapped artifacts and or creatures, I can tap those. And then if I do, I transform this into an amazing legendary artifact land. Taps for white, and whenever I cast an artifact or creature spell using mana produced by this thing, I get to make another one of those soldiers. So this is just phenomenal all around. And again, with the Avacyn's Memorial, it will be completely protected, so insane. Heroes Podium, 5. All my legendary creatures get +1/+1 for every other legendary I control. Basically, it's like the Joda that we seen earlier, except instead of +X+X, it's just +1/+1 for each on board. But I think it works out to the same total. So basically it's like doubling double. And then I can pay X, look at the top X cards in my library, reveal a legendary creature from among them, put it into my hand, and the rest on bottom of my library in any order. Again, I'm just finding things to invite to the party. Helm of the Host, another way to create copies of things. I can make tokens, copies of all my legendaries, but they won't be legendary tokens. And so, yeah. It's just way too good a card not to include in this deck. And then finally, Chroma's Memorial is the last card in this deck. I have a beautiful full art one first off, which is gorgeous. But all my creatures are going to get flying, first strike, vigilance, trample, haste, and protection from black and red if this is on board. And again, it being legendary, it's going to be protected by my Avacyn's Memorial. Basically, you're going to have to exile my stuff. If you want to beat me, you're going to have to exile my stuff constantly if I can get everything on board the way I want it. If I don't get all my stuff on board, obviously you can send stuff to the graveyard, but again, I have ways of recurring things. So ultimately what this deck is really weak to is exile triggers. And I don't have a way out of that, actually, to be honest, which is why, like I say, it is very much a glass cannon of a deck. But it is arguably easily in my top... Definitely in my top 10. It might be in my top 5. I'm not sure. Favorite decks of all time that I've built. But, yeah. Just to reiterate, going back to the beginning of the video, I have the Blacksmith's Talent and I have the Masterwork Ingenuity. I really don't know which one to include in this deck, to be honest. Both seem like they have a really solid place in terms of if somebody is playing, say, one of the really cool sword cards, I can steal their sword and put it onto my battlefield with this, because this copies anything on the battlefield that's an equipment. It doesn't have to be necessarily something that I played as an equipment, so that's the main reason why I picked this to stay in the deck, is because it lets me take things that are my opponents and add it to my army. But, excuse me, the ability to equip for free and then have all my stuff get double strike is pretty tempting. So I would love to hear in the comments what you think, which one you would run. And in the meantime, in between time, that is the deck. I hope that you guys have enjoyed my Commander Party deck. And I'm going to do a pack of Dollarama Draws of Destiny, not today, but in the next card-related video. Because, well, we're going to have Dollarama Draws of Destiny on Tuesday, obviously. But I am going to be introducing at some point this week 1 to 100. I mentioned that I was going to be starting a new series on the channel, and that series is going to kick off with the first episode at some point this week. Whether I get to film it in the car or at home, I'm not sure yet, but yeah, that's all I got for you today, though. Anything you want to say, Kaiba? Daddy, give me home so we can play in the snow. Yes, my son. I know. Snow. All right. Much love to you all from Kaiba the Pug and myself to you. Thank you for watching this long episode of Super Deck Sunday, which actually didn't end up being as long as I thought it was. I thought it was over an hour, but it's actually probably right around the hour mark. Anyways. Yes, baby. You ate too much snow again, didn't you? I know. Love you. Thanks for watching. Bye.